In 1775, a London watchmaker named Alexander Cumming received a simple patent for an S-shaped plumbing pipe. This small curve of metal effectively trapped foul air inside domestic sewer lines. What nobody knew at the time was that this innocent drawing would trigger a catastrophic chain reaction across the globe. The domestic flush toilet completely dismantled the traditional layout of human cities. It inadvertently accelerated some of the deadliest cholera epidemics in European history. Wealthy industrial monopolies quickly weaponized this human desire for private cleanliness to generate unprecedented billions. This is a dark, calculated chronicle of how modern civilization built its fragile survival on a hidden foundation of engineered concealment. It is a story of economic capture, institutional denial, and corporate control. Ancient Rome built its entire imperial identity on grand engineering marvels. The construction of the massive Cloaca Maxima remains a celebrated milestone of classical infrastructure. This giant stone vault successfully drained the marshy valleys of the growing metropolis. It eventually became the central repository for all urban wastewater. Yet the daily reality for the average Roman citizen was far from civilized. Most people lived in crowded, multi-story apartment complexes called insulae. These buildings completely lacked any internal plumbing connections or running water. The lower classes lived in constant physical discomfort. They had to transport their daily waste down narrow, dark wooden staircases to the street below every single day. This systemic neglect created a breeding ground for continuous disease and pestilence within the urban core. Ordinary citizens relied heavily on large public stone latrines scattered throughout the urban centers. These public facilities were designed with an absolute disregard for personal privacy. Up to 50 individuals sat side by side on long, continuous stone benches. There were no dividing partitions or walls between the users. Beneath these stone seats, a constant stream of public wastewater attempted to flush refuse away into the deeper channels. This dark, subterranean environment harbored terrifying and volatile dangers. Large quantities of organic matter decomposed in the slow-moving, unventilated currents. The natural process of organic decay generated massive pockets of highly flammable methane gas. This invisible hazard turned a routine biological necessity into a hazardous gamble for every visitor. The toxic gas routinely gathered in dense concentrations directly beneath the stone seating slabs. Spontaneous underground explosions frequently shattered the peace of these crowded public spaces. Sudden columns of blue flame regularly erupted directly through the seating openings. Unsuspecting citizens suffered severe physical trauma and deep burns during these terrifying incidents. And no, I'm not making that up. Roman historical documents contain numerous references to these sudden toilet explosions. The ancient writer Aelian detailed the profound anxiety felt by citizens entering these volatile chambers. People frequently carried defensive protective charms to ward off the underground demons. These primitive amulets were the only psychological defense against an engineered infrastructure failure that threatened their daily lives. The Roman state viewed these hazardous public facilities primarily as an excellent source of cash. Emperor Vespasian recognized the immense financial potential hidden within human biology. He instituted a highly controversial public tax on the collection of urine from public latrines. Urine was a valuable industrial chemical used extensively by traditional cloth tanners and launderers. The tanners utilized the natural ammonia content to process raw animal hides. When his son Titus criticized the tax as disgusting, Vespasian held a gold coin to his nose. He famously uttered the immortal words that money does not smell. This historical moment marked the definitive birth of state-sanctioned financial extraction from human waste. The state officially financialized biology. The dramatic collapse of the Western Roman Empire erased these complex engineering practices from Europe. Urban planning entered a phase of profound, multi-century stagnation. Medieval cities expanded organically without any centralized sanitary infrastructure or administrative oversight. The daily sensory experience of these medieval spaces was incredibly intense. Most ordinary urban households relied entirely on basic wooden or earthenware chamber pots. The management of these vessels followed a chaotic, decentralized routine. Every morning, Residents simply emptied the contents of their nocturnal containers directly out of their upper-story windows. The waste fell directly onto the narrow streets below, creating an unpredictable environment for pedestrians. This practice turned walking through a medieval city into a hazardous psychological game. Pedestrians walked with constant apprehension, scanning the upper windows for sudden movement. Municipal authorities eventually recognized the severe disruption caused by this continuous airborne bombardment. Paris introduced strict legal ordinances to control the practice. Citizens were legally required to open their windows and shout a specific warning 3 times. They screamed the phrase "look out below" before tipping their vessels. This verbal warning provided only minimal protection to unsuspecting passerby below. The physical layout of the cities degraded rapidly under this daily assault, transforming elegant thoroughfares into open ditches. The unpaved dirt roads transformed into thick, viscous fields of mud, horse manure, and human waste. Pedestrians wore specialized wooden platform shoes called pattens to elevate themselves above the street sludge. The wealthy aristocracy lived under a similar cloud of constant olfactory distress. Elite stone castles featured specialized structural chambers known as garderobes. These small, narrow rooms projected directly outward over the external fortress walls. The waste dropped through a simple hole, falling into the defensive castle moats. Alternatively, the material plummeted down long internal vertical shafts built into the thick stone masonry, settling deep within the foundation. Beneath the elegant stone floors of royal palaces, enormous subterranean cesspools collected material for decades. Royal servants rarely volunteered to cleanse these hazardous, suffocating chambers. The sheer weight of the accumulated waste frequently threatened the structural integrity of the entire building. In the year 1184, this architectural neglect culminated in a catastrophic structural failure. King Louis III of Thuringia convened a major diplomatic assembly at the Erfurt citadel. Dozens of high-ranking nobles, knights, and bishops gathered in a large upper meeting hall. The ancient floorboards were completely compromised by corrosive vapors rising from the massive cesspool directly below. The floor suddenly snapped under the collective weight of the assembled aristocratic elite. Over 60 high-ranking counts, barons, and holy bishops plummeted through the collapsed ceiling. They fell directly into the deep, liquid contents of the castle cesspool. The vast majority of the victims drowned or suffocated in the toxic material before rescue teams could arrive. This shocking tragedy altered the political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire in an instant. It exposed the literal, visceral rot hidden directly beneath the surface of feudal power. Yet human waste remained an essential element of the broader economic system for centuries after this disaster. For generations, human waste operated as an incredibly valuable agricultural commodity. Cities relied on a specialized, highly paid class of nocturnal workers known as gong fermours or night soil men. These individuals worked exclusively under the cover of total darkness, typically between midnight and dawn. They descended into the deep urban cesspools with heavy iron shovels and wooden buckets. They manually scooped out the dense material and hauled it out of the city gates. This night soil was eagerly purchased by regional farmers operating the agricultural green belts surrounding major cities. The survival of urban food networks depended entirely on this trade. The extracted material served as the primary fertilizer for the intensive cultivation of grain and vegetables. The entire survival of early modern cities depended on this continuous cyclical metabolic loop. Urban waste directly fueled the production of rural food supplies. The food was then transported back into the city to sustain the growing population. It was a highly sustainable, self-contained system of ecological renewal. Think about that for a second. Without night soil men, early modern cities would have starved completely. The market value of human waste kept the entire urban ecosystem functional for centuries, preventing total collapse. The arrival of the Industrial Revolution completely shattered this traditional ecological equilibrium. Rural populations abandoned their ancestral fields to find work in the rapidly expanding factory towns. London grew at a furious, completely unmanageable rate. The sheer volume of humanity overwhelmed the existing networks of manual night soil collection. The traditional brick cesspools beneath family homes filled faster than laborers could empty them. The air of the metropolis grew heavy with dense, toxic fumes. Mechanical innovation seemed to offer the only viable path out of this urban crisis. It was the perfect moment for an inventive, modern solution to emerge. In 1775, a precise Scottish watchmaker named Alexander Cumming introduced his mechanical masterpiece. He patented a device that combined a water-flushing mechanism with a unique S-shaped pipe. This simple, elegant curve retained a small volume of clean water after every single flush. This water barrier acted as an absolute seal against the subterranean world. It successfully prevented foul gases from entering the domestic living space. It was a brilliant triumph of watchmaker precision. Wealthy Victorian citizens eagerly embraced this new technology. The indoor water closet quickly became the ultimate symbol of modern civil progress and personal refinement. The new indoor flush toilets required an immense volume of water to operate successfully. Every pull of the chain sent gallons of liquid rushing down the pipes. London homes, however, were not connected to a unified public sewer network. The flush toilets drained directly into the existing, porous brick cesspools located right beneath basement floors. These older structures were built strictly to contain solid material. They were completely incapable of managing thousands of gallons of additional liquid wastewater. The sudden, daily onslaught of water caused immediate and widespread structural failure across the entire capital city. The liquid mixture saturated the old mortar and broke through the brick boundaries. It began to seep rapidly through the surrounding urban soil. This contaminated fluid quickly entered the shallow gravel aquifers beneath the city streets. These exact aquifers supplied the public neighborhood pumps with daily drinking water. The water closet had accidentally linked the human waste system directly to the public drinking supply. The entire water infrastructure of the British capital became an invisible conveyor belt for deadly microscopic pathogens. The stage was set for a massive biological disaster that would devastate the population. The consequences of this engineering oversight were immediate and catastrophic. In the mid-19th century, repeated waves of cholera systematically devastated the urban working class. Healthy individuals woke up without symptoms and died in agony before sunset. The dominant medical authorities of the era remained utterly blind to the true cause of the slaughter. The medical establishment was firmly dedicated to the traditional miasma theory. Doctors argued that diseases were transmitted exclusively through foul air and noxious atmospheric odors. They believed that the S-bend toilet was actively saving lives by trapping bad smells inside the homes. The real destruction was occurring silently underground, entirely shielded from public view. A quiet, observant British physician named John Snow began to openly question this universal medical orthodoxy. Snow investigated a devastatingly sharp cholera outbreak in London's crowded Soho district during the late summer of 1854. He completely rejected the abstract, gaseous theories of his elite contemporaries. Instead, he implemented a rigorous, data-driven geographical methodology. Snow meticulously recorded every single cholera death on a detailed map of the neighborhood. A clear, undeniable spatial pattern quickly materialized before his eyes. The fatalities clustered with immense density around a popular public water pump on Broad Street. He conducted extensive interviews with local families to gather empirical evidence. Snow discovered that a resident had washed an infected infant's diaper in a basement. The water from that washing drained into a leaky cesspool sitting mere inches from the Broad Street well. The new water closet technology had delivered the cholera pathogen directly into the neighborhood's primary drinking source. Snow presented his detailed map and clear statistical data to the local medical authorities immediately. He demanded the immediate removal of the Broad Street pump handle to halt the spread of the disease. The local officials reluctantly complied, and the local outbreak stopped almost immediately. Yet the broader medical elite reacted to his discoveries with intense, defensive hostility. They ridiculed his waterborne theory as an absurd, unscientific threat to medical progress. The National Board of Health flatly refused to endorse his published scientific findings. To accept Snow's reality would require a massive, immediate intervention in urban property laws across the country. Wealthy landlords and powerful real estate syndicates faced staggering financial liabilities if their properties were declared sanitary hazards. The economic elite chose to systematically protect corporate real estate values over human lives. Jon Snow suffered immense professional isolation and relentless mockery from his medical peers. He suffered a sudden, fatal stroke in 1858 at the age of 45. He passed away in complete loneliness, his revolutionary work entirely ignored by the British state. His brilliant warnings were suppressed to preserve the profitable expansion of industrial cities. The institutional denial continued until the raw reality of nature forced an undeniable reckoning. The summer of 1858 brought unprecedented, scorching heat across the British Isles. The River Thames had become the final destination for London's millions of indoor flush toilets. Every day, vast quantities of untreated chemical and human waste poured directly into the sluggish river currents. The intense heat caused the river levels to drop to historic lows. The baking sun transformed the exposed riverbanks into vast fields of steaming, dark human refuse that paralyzed the capital. The resulting stench was so incredibly overwhelming it altered historical terminology forever. It became known across the British Empire as the Great Stink. The toxic atmosphere quickly breached the thick stone walls of the newly constructed Palace of Westminster. Members of Parliament attempted to conduct national business by soaking their curtains in chloride of lime. These chemical countermeasures failed completely to neutralize the suffocating, heavy air. High-ranking politicians fled the legislative chambers in acute physical distress. Lawmakers openly debated the immediate evacuation of the entire government to Oxford. The vast British Empire was completely paralyzed by the accumulated waste of its own capital city. The crisis finally forced the political elite to abandon their beloved miasma theories. They realized that their personal survival demanded an immediate, massive state intervention. In a state of total systemic panic, Parliament passed emergency legislation in record time. They granted extraordinary powers and a massive budget to a brilliant civil engineer named Joseph Bazalgette. He initiated one of the most ambitious and expensive engineering projects of the 19th century. His army of laborers consumed over 300 million heavy bricks. They mixed thousands of tons of innovative Portland cement to construct a massive underground labyrinth. Bazalgette built hundreds of miles of enormous intercepting sewers parallel to the river. This monumental network permanently altered the subterranean geography of London. The system successfully captured the urban waste and channeled it miles away to the eastern estuaries. The immediate threat of cholera vanished from the city streets almost overnight. The public celebrated this achievement as a magnificent victory for industrial civilization. However, this massive public works project laid the operational foundation for a completely new paradigm of economic exploitation. Corporate syndicates and industrial financiers observed this centralized infrastructure with intense interest. They recognized an unprecedented opportunity for long-term financial capture. Before this central intervention, waste management was localized, simple, and largely free. Centralization changed the socio-economic dynamic forever. The construction of centralized sewer networks created a state of absolute, unavoidable urban dependency. Industrialists quickly realized they could financialize the most basic biological necessity of the human species. The traditional circular economy of agricultural reuse was systematically criminalized. The independent night soil workers were driven out of business by strict public health acts. The state granted exclusive monopolies to private water and infrastructure corporations. Humans lost independent ownership of their own bodily functions. This brings us to a critical transition in our modern history. The control of infrastructure became the ultimate weapon of the ruling class. We must look closely at how this trap was closed around the global population. The details reveal an engineered reality. The archivist slowly looks up from his massive desk, his silver hair catching the green light of the banker's lamp. He fixes his cold, cynical gaze directly onto the lens. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything. The creation of the modern sewer system was not an act of pure humanitarian charity. It was the ultimate capture of a biological market. Corporations realized that once you control the pipes, you control the population. They turned a natural bodily function into a permanent monthly subscription model. You must now pay a private corporate entity for the legal right to discard your own biological waste. If you find these hidden historical realities unsettling, take a moment to subscribe to this channel right now. Help us expose the deep structures of architectural and economic control. Your subscription ensures that these suppressed narratives continue to reach the light of day. Now, let us return to the precise moment this corporate trap was sprung across the globe. The financialization of sanitation triggered an immediate industrial boom in manufacturing centers. Specialized factories emerged to supply the rapidly expanding global market for plumbing fixtures. Entrepreneurs like Thomas Crapper and Thomas Twyford transformed toilet production into a highly profitable art form. They abandoned traditional wood and metal construction in favor of mass-produced, vitreous china and glazed earthenware. These materials offered a perfectly smooth, non-porous surface that could be easily cleaned. The white porcelain bowl became the new standard of domestic civilization. It was a blank, sterile canvas designed to erase the messy reality of human biology from the modern mind. Corporate marketing departments immediately recognized the immense power of psychological manipulation. They launched sophisticated, multi-decade advertising campaigns designed to weaponize human shame. Marketing executives deliberately associated traditional sanitation methods with moral decay, poverty, and social inferiority. They sold the public an engineered illusion of absolute domestic sterility. The porcelain toilet was marketed not merely as a convenient plumbing fixture. It was presented as a vital moral shield protecting the civilized family from contamination. Cleanliness became a corporate commodity wrapped in social status, forcing compliance through social pressure. This calculated psychological pressure forced millions of households to invest in expensive internal plumbing upgrades. Families willingly spent their hard-earned savings to install standard white bowls in their homes. This domestic shift had profound macroeconomic consequences. It altered the internal architecture of the modern home permanently. The traditional outhouse or detached water closet disappeared completely from urban blueprints. Architects began designing homes around a specialized, dedicated interior space. This space was the modern bathroom, built entirely to accommodate the corporate porcelain fixture, locking consumers into a lifetime of utility bills. This architectural shift created a massive, self-sustaining ecosystem of secondary corporate entities. Plumbing component manufacturers, piping conglomerates, and chemical corporations grew into multi-billion-dollar empires. They created an endless array of specialized cleaning products, disinfectants, and deodorizers. Every product was carefully formulated to maintain the fragile illusion of a sterile home. The consumer was caught in a perpetual cycle of financial expenditure. They bought water from a corporate monopoly to flush a corporate bowl. They then purchased corporate chemicals to clean the corporate porcelain, generating continuous revenue for the sanitary cartels. The physical layout of the modern metropolis evolved to reflect this absolute infrastructural dependency. Sky-high urban land values became entirely contingent on subterranean plumbing connections. A modern skyscraper is essentially a vertical monument built around a core of pressurized water pipes. Without these continuous internal hydraulic arteries, the modern vertical city is completely unlivable. The real estate market became wholly dependent on the continuous functionality of the centralized water grid. Wealth was no longer measured merely by land ownership. It was measured by your proximity to the primary municipal sewer line. This structural dependency has created a highly volatile and unsustainable ecological reality. Every single day, modern megacities consume hundreds of billions of gallons of highly refined, chlorinated drinking water. We use this precious, life-sustaining resource for the sole purpose of transporting our biological waste through underground pipes. We dilute a highly concentrated stream of organic matter with pristine, filtered water. This process destroys the delicate ecology of global freshwater systems. It turns clean rivers and fragile marine ecosystems into massive biological dead zones, trading planetary health for domestic convenience. The ancient, sustainable loop of returning nutrients to the agricultural soil has been permanently broken. It has been replaced by a linear, destructive model of mass disposal and chemical contamination. The modern sanitary industry has successfully insulated us from the environmental consequences of our own biology. We push a small lever, and our waste vanishes into the subterranean darkness. We enjoy the immediate visual comfort of a sparkling white bowl. Yet this visual comfort is a profound systemic illusion masking an extreme civilization-scale vulnerability that threatens our long-term survival. Our entire urban existence now rests upon a hyper-complex, fragile network of automated pumps, treatment plants, and electrical grids. This massive infrastructure operates continuously, entirely hidden beneath the asphalt of our streets. It requires a constant, uninterrupted supply of electrical energy and industrial chemicals to maintain its operational equilibrium. The average citizen remains completely oblivious to the sheer scale of this mechanical life support system. We treat the immediate removal of our waste as an absolute, unchanging law of nature. The reality is far more dangerous than we dare to acknowledge. The complex hydraulic systems of our modern cities are highly vulnerable to systemic shocks. Severe cyber attacks, sudden prolonged grid failures, or natural disasters can cripple a city's pumping infrastructure in an instant. If the automated pumps lose electrical power, the entire illusion of modern sanitation collapses immediately. Without the active mechanical pressure of the water network, gravity works in reverse. The waste from thousands of vertical apartments begins to accumulate and back up through the lowest drains, exposing the fragile underbelly of our architecture. The modern metropolis possesses absolutely no secondary, alternative system to manage human biology. Within a mere 48 hours of a total grid failure, major urban centers would transform into lethal biological traps. The streets would fill with toxic overflows, and waterborne pathogens would reclaim the environment. The sophisticated, multi-million-dollar real estate developments would become completely uninhabitable zones of pestilence. The entire edifice of our advanced, high-tech civilization would be brought down by the very material it spent centuries trying to hide behind white porcelain shields. We have traded our biological independence and environmental stability for a temporary sensation of visual purity. Alexander Cumming's simple watchmaker invention successfully cleared the air inside our private apartments. It gave us the immediate comfort required to build the modern world. But the forces of industrial capitalism took that comfort and turned it into an invisible, permanent cage. They successfully transformed a universal biological reality into a highly lucrative instrument of perpetual economic control. We remain completely captured by the hidden geometry of the porcelain trap, blind to the structural dependency below. The archivist slowly removes his glasses and closes his ancient folio. We remain trapped by the S-bend of 1775, hiding a fragile civilization. Please subscribe to explore more hidden history. Click the video on your screen right now to dive deeper.